Her jacket was already over her shoulder. 12 hours done. She just wanted to go home. Then the doors exploded open and a man in full naval uniform stormed into the emergency department like war had followed him through the door. He wasn't looking at charts. He wasn't looking for a doctor. His eyes locked onto her, and in a voice that cut through every beeping monitor, every rolling cart, every conversation in that room, he screamed a name she hadn't heard in 3 years. Not her name, her code name. Kestrel. If this story already has your heart pounding, hit that subscribe button and drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's go back to the beginning because nothing about this moment was an accident. She had a system. That was the thing people never understood about Threnody Caspian, the woman they knew as Threnody Caspian anyway. She had a system for everything. The way she folded her scrubs before a shift. The way she always parked in spot 14C, never closer, never farther. The way she smiled at the right times, asked the right questions, and never not once in 2 years let anyone get close enough to ask the wrong ones. The emergency department at Norfolk General was loud, relentless, and beautifully chaotic. It was the perfect place to disappear. And for 2 years, that's exactly what she had done. The shift had been brutal. 14 patients through triage before noon. A construction worker with a nail through his palm who kept trying to show her pictures on his phone. A grandmother with chest pain who turned out to be having a panic attack and who cried when Threnody held her hand. A teenager who'd overdosed and whose mother showed up screaming so loudly that security had to intervene. By 7 in the evening, Threnody's feet ached, her back was tight, and the fluorescent lights had been drilling into the backs of her eyes for the last 4 hours. She'd already handed off her last patient to the oncoming nurse, a cheerful woman named Dana, who always smelled like vanilla extract and always asked too many questions. "You heading out?" Dana called from across the desk. "Yeah." Threnody pulled her jacket off the back of her chair. "Long one today. Tell me about it. You coming to Sandra's thing on Friday?" Threnody gave her a smile, the kind she'd practiced. Warm enough to satisfy, not warm enough to invite follow-up. "Maybe I'll text her." She wouldn't text her. She never went to the things. She was friendly enough that no one took it personally and distant enough that no one pushed. It was a careful, deliberate balance she had spent years calibrating. Not cold, just contained. She swung her bag over her shoulder and headed for the exit. 12 steps to the automatic doors. She counted them every night without realizing it anymore. 11. 10. The doors at the far end of the department, the ambulance bay entrance, the one that slammed like a thunderclap every time it opened, exploded inward. Not the slide, the slam. Every head in the department turned. He came through fast. Military posture, full naval dress, uniform, gold braid at the shoulders catching the overhead lights. He wasn't injured. He wasn't being brought in. He was moving with the kind of purpose that made people step back without knowing why, the way you step back from something that's moving too fast to stop. His eyes swept the room like a radar scan. Nurses froze. A doctor mid-sentence just stopped talking. Threnody had taken exactly one more step toward the exit. She stopped too. Don't look. Don't turn. Keep moving. But her body had already betrayed her. Her jacket, the one she'd just settled over her shoulder, slipped. She reached for it, and in the half second it took her to do that, his eyes found hers. She knew him. God help her, she knew him. Admiral Thaddeus Orvath, older, grayer, 30 pounds lighter than the last time she'd seen him, which meant something had gone wrong. Men like Orvath didn't lose weight from eating well. He crossed the department in 12 long strides, and then he opened his mouth and did the one thing she had spent 3 years making sure no one in this building would ever do. Kestrel. The word hit the air like a gunshot. Everything stopped. Every monitor, every conversation, every rolling cart, it all seemed to go silent for a single suspended moment. Threnody didn't react. Her face didn't change. But her hands went cold. Her jacket hit the floor. "Excuse me, sir, you can't just walk in here." One of the triage nurses, Brenda, a stout woman with 20 years of experience and exactly zero tolerance for disruptions, was already moving toward him. "It's all right," Threnody said. Her voice came out steady. She was almost surprised by it. She bent down, picked up her jacket, and turned to face him fully. "He's with me," she said. "He's my uncle. He gets confused sometimes." It was a terrible cover. She knew it was terrible even as she said it, but Brenda was already overwhelmed and already half turned back toward her station, and the rest of the staff had already started the polite performance of pretending they hadn't heard. Norfolk General had a strict culture of minding your business. It was one of the reasons she'd chosen it. Threnody stepped forward, closed the distance between herself and the Admiral, and said in a voice low enough that only he could hear it, "Not here. Not one more word. Walk with me." The break room was empty. She checked before steering him through the door. She always noticed which rooms were empty, which hallways had traffic, which exits were clear. She'd been doing it so long it didn't even feel like vigilance anymore. It felt like breathing. She closed the door behind them, turned around and crossed her arms. "How did you find me?" Orvath looked older up close. Not just the weight, the skin around his eyes had gone loose, and there was something in his expression she hadn't seen before. Something she didn't have a word for, which frightened her because she always had a word for things. It looked like grief. "That's not the question you should be asking me right now," he said. "That is exactly the question that I'm asking you right now." Her voice was still low, but the steadiness was costing her something. "You just walked into my department. You said that name in front of 30 people, 7 times," he said. "I counted." "Orvath?" "Kestrel." "Don't." The word came out sharp enough that he stopped. She took a breath. "Don't call me that. Not in this building. Not ever again. My name is Threnody Caspian. I am a registered nurse. I have been here for 2 years, and whatever you think you need from me..." "Harmon is dead." The room went quiet. Not the department quiet from before. Something quieter, something interior. She heard her own pulse. "What?" "Marcus Harmon, 3 weeks ago. They said it was a fall. He went off the Ridge Trail near his home in Virginia. The medical examiner ruled it accidental." Orvath's jaw tightened. Marcus Harmon ran 50 miles every year and hadn't missed a trail step in his life. Threnodi's arms were still crossed, but her grip had tightened on her own elbows. "Who else?" "Ewan. 2 weeks before Harmon. Carbon monoxide leak in her apartment. The detector had been..." He paused. "Disabled. Lena Ewan is dead." It wasn't a question. The way she said it, it wasn't even disbelief. It was something worse. It was the sound of someone doing math they already know the answer to. "And Devereaux," Orvath said. "Last week, hit and run. Driver never found." 3 names. 3 people from Operation Hatchet Gale. 3 people who were supposed to be the only ones who knew what had really happened off the coast of Ramadji Island 4 years ago. Threnody unfolded her arms. She walked to the small table in the center of the room and put both palms flat on the surface, looking down at the wood grain as if it could anchor her. "They're moving in order," she said. "Yes." "Seniority. Harmon was senior team lead. Ewan was second. Devereaux was a third-ranked field operative on the mission." "Yes." She looked up. "And I was fourth." "You were first," Orvath said quietly. "You were always first. Harmon, you and Devereaux, they were the names on paper. You were the one who actually pulled that mission together when it fell apart. Whoever is doing this knows that. They're saving you for last on purpose." Threnody stared at him. "Saving me?" she repeated. "That's an interesting word for what you just described. I need you to come in. We can put you in protective custody. We can..." "No." "Kest." "Threnody." Her voice hit the table. "And no, absolutely not. The moment I walk back through that door, I become real again. Right now, I am a nurse named Threnody Caspian, and I do not exist in any system that matters. The moment I come in, I'm back on the grid, and whoever is doing this will know exactly where I am." "They already know where you are," Orvath said. The room got very still again. She looked at him. "Say that again?" "They've known for at least a month." His voice was steady, but his eyes weren't. "That's how I found you. We intercepted a communication encrypted military grade with your location, your alias, your work schedule." He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and set a single folded piece of paper on the table between them. "That's a partial transcript. The names are redacted because we don't know who sent it. But the recipient..." She picked up the paper. She read it. Her face didn't move, but something behind her eyes went very, very cold. "This was sent 3 weeks ago," she said. "Yes." "Harmon died 3 weeks ago." "Yes." She set the paper down. Someone told them where Harmon was. Someone told them where Ewan was. Someone told them where Devereaux was. She looked at Orvath, and that same someone told them where I am. That's what I believe, yes. Which means the leak isn't external. She said it the way you say a thing you already know but were hoping you were wrong about. The leak is inside. Orvath said nothing, which was its own answer. She paced. 3 steps toward the coffee machine, 3 steps back. It wasn't nervous pacing. It was thinking pacing, the kind she'd done since she was a kid, and her mind needed her body moving to process at full speed. Who knows you came here tonight? My aide, 2 members of my personal security detail. Who knew you were looking for me? A pause. That's a shorter list. Orvath, who? Myself, my aide Commander Parrish. And he stopped. And Director Kellyan at the agency. I had to go through proper channels to access the intercept. That required sign-off. Threnody stopped pacing. Kellyan knew you were coming here. He approved the access. He didn't know what I was going to do with... He knew. She turned to face him. Orvath, think about what you're saying. Kellyan approved access to a classified intercept that contained my location. Within 3 weeks of that intercept being sent, every other member of my team is dead. And you walked in through the front door of my hospital in full dress uniform, screaming. She stopped herself, breathed. You might as well have put a banner outside. Orvath stood straight. The grief in his face didn't go away, but something harder moved underneath it. I came because I didn't know where else to go, he said. I don't know who I can trust inside that building anymore. I don't know who's been turned, who's being pressured, who's been compromised. His voice dropped lower. I am 63 years old and I have given my life to that institution. And right now I am standing in a hospital break room talking to a woman I helped put in hiding because it is the only move I have left. He looked at her steadily. I'm not here to drag you back in. I'm here because you are the smartest person I have ever run an operation with, and 3 members of your team are dead, and I don't want you to be the 4th. Silence. Threnody looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at the door. She was already thinking about the hospital. The layout, the staff, the patterns she'd noticed over 2 years that she'd filed away without quite knowing why, because some part of her had always known, in the deep, quiet place where all real knowledge lives, that the day would come when she'd need it. How long have you been in the building? She said. 11 minutes. Who else came with you? 2 security there in the parking structure. Did anyone follow you here? Not into the building. Here, to Norfolk. He hesitated. That hesitation was a cold, metallic thing. You're not sure, she said. I took precautions. You're not sure. She said it again. Not an accusation, a recalibration. Okay. Then we have a problem that's bigger than just me. She moved back to the table, picked up the paper again, read it once more. Then she folded it and put it in the pocket of her scrubs. Hey, Orvath started. I need to think, she said, and I think better when I'm moving. She picked up her jacket from where she draped it over a chair. You are going to sit here and you are not going to use your phone. Not one call, not one text, not a single thing. Do you understand me? You can't just... You came to me, she said. That means for the next however many hours this takes, you do things my way. That is the arrangement. She looked at him once hard. Nod if you understand. A beat. He nodded. She went to the door, stopped with her hand on the handle. Admiral. Yes. The people who killed Harmon, Ewan, and Devereaux. She didn't turn around. What do they think they're covering up? What do they think we know? A long pause. The real origin of the Ramaj Island ambush, he said. Not the official version, the real one. She stood there for another second. Then she opened the door and walked back out into the noise and the lights and the perfectly ordinary chaos of the emergency department she had spent 2 years hiding inside. She moved like she always moved. Steady, purposeful, like a woman who belonged exactly where she was. But her mind was running in a completely different direction now. They know I'm here. They've known for a month. Which means everything I've built in 2 years, every routine, every relationship, every carefully constructed detail of Threnody Caspian has been watched. She passed the nurse's station without breaking stride. Brenda was on the phone. Dana was updating a chart. There was the usual traffic of the evening shift, the familiar faces, the familiar sounds. She scanned every single one of them. Someone in this building knows who I am. The thought arrived not like a shock, but like a door swinging open onto a room she'd always known was there, but had chosen not to enter. The intercept Orvath had shown her hadn't been sent from across the ocean. The language, the specificity, the detailed work schedule, parking spot, even the ID number on her badge that didn't come from satellite surveillance. That came from someone standing close enough to read her badge. She turned the corner toward the IT office, and that's when she saw Pembley. Marcus Pembley was one of those people who existed in every workplace without anyone quite being able to say what it was he actually did. He had a badge. He had a lanyard. He was always somewhere he had a reason to be, which meant no one ever questioned why he was there. Threnody had given him exactly as much warmth as she gave everyone, enough to be friendly, not enough to be memorable. She knew he'd been with the hospital for about 16 months. She knew he had a habit of refilling his coffee at the exact same times every day, which she'd clocked without meaning to. She knew he always used the computer terminals near the east stairwell, even though there were closer stations. She hadn't thought anything of it until right now. He was standing at the terminal near the east stairwell at 7:23 in the evening, which wasn't his shift. She knew it wasn't his shift because she knew everyone's schedule in the department the way a chess player knows the board, not from effort, but from attention. She walked past him, didn't look at him, but in the half second she passed the terminal, she clocked the screen. Patient records, not a current patient, a record being accessed from an archived file, a file with her badge number on it. Her entire body went perfectly, deliberately, professionally calm. She kept walking. 14 steps to the supply corridor. She turned into it, back against the wall, out of sight. Her heart was moving fast now. Not panic, not yet, but something adjacent to it. The kind of physical response that isn't fear so much as the body acknowledging that the situation has just become genuinely dangerous. He's been watching me this whole time, and he doesn't know I know. That's the only advantage I have. She closed her eyes for 3 seconds, not to calm down, to calculate. Then she opened them, straightened her jacket, and walked back out. She had work to do, and somewhere in the building, in a room she hadn't identified yet, behind a face she might still trust, someone was waiting to find out if the Admiral had reached her in time, or if they already had. She gave herself 45 seconds. That was all. 45 seconds in the supply corridor to let her mind catch up to her on air, to let the pieces arrange themselves into something she could work with. She'd learned that trick years ago, not from training, but from necessity. Panic was a luxury. Calculation was a tool. And right now, the only thing standing between her and a very bad outcome was the quality of her thinking. Pembley was accessing her file. Her badge file, not a patient record, not a department log. Her personnel record, the one that had her ID photo, her work history as Threnody Caspian, her shift rotations, her department assignments. The kind of file you pull when you're building a dossier. The kind of file you pull when you're confirming a location. Which meant he wasn't just watching her. He was reporting in real time. She thought about Orvath sitting in the break room, about the intercept, about the 3 names that were already gone, Harassment and Devereaux, and about the very specific, very deliberate way in which each of them had been removed. No drama, no spectacle, just quiet, clean exits dressed up as accidents. That told her something about who she was dealing with. Not reckless people, patient ones. The kind who understood that the most dangerous weapon wasn't force, it was time. She straightened her jacket, rolled her shoulders once, and walked back out. Her face said everything was fine. Her mind was already 3 moves ahead. The first thing she needed was to know how long she had. Not in an abstract, someday they'll come for me sense. Concretely, tonight. How many hours, how many minutes before whoever Pembley was reporting to decided that the Admiral's arrival had changed the timeline and moved things up? Because that was the variable Orvath's appearance had introduced. He'd blown her cover by walking in, yes. But more importantly, whoever was running this operation now knew that she'd been warned. And warned targets were unpredictable. Unpredictable targets had a tendency to disappear, and the people after her could not afford for her to disappear again. Not with what she knew. So they would move fast. Tonight, probably. Maybe within the hour. She needed the IT office. Not the terminal Pembley was using. She wasn't going anywhere near that terminal. She needed the secondary server room 2 floors up, the one that most of the nursing staff didn't know existed because it had been reclassified during a renovation 18 months ago, and the signage had never been updated. She knew about it because she'd helped a facilities tech navigate a burst pipe issue up there 6 months ago, and she'd made a point, the way she always made a point, of remembering things that other people let slide. She took the east stairwell, not the one near Pembley, the other one. Dana caught her in the second-floor hallway. "Hey, I thought you were heading out." "Forgot something," Threnody said with heart bursting on stride. "You okay? You look." "Long shift, Marge said, sure. I'm fine." "Okay." Dana fell back. Then, "Hey, Tren." She stopped, turned. Dana was looking at her with that slightly furrowed expression that people got when they were trying to decide whether to say a thing or let it go. Threnody waited. "That man," Dana said, lowering her voice. "The one in the uniform. I heard him say something to you when you picked up your jacket." She paused. "Was that a name?" Threnody looked at her for exactly the right amount of time. Not too fast, not too slow. "He's confused," she said again. "It happens. He thought I was someone else." She gave her the smile, the warm one. "Go finish your charts. I'll be gone in 10 minutes. Dana nodded, but the furrow didn't entirely leave. Threnody turned and kept moving. 10 minutes, she thought. She's going to be thinking about that for the rest of her shift. And if anyone comes asking questions after tonight, Dana is going to be the first person they talk to. She filed that away and kept going. The server room was unlocked, which was either lazy or convenient, and right now she chose to call it convenient. The terminal inside was older, slower linked to the hospital's administrative backbone rather than the public-facing system. It took her 40 seconds to get in using an access credential she'd memorized 8 months ago during a routine IT cross-training session that no one had thought was worth paying close attention to. She had. She pulled up the hospital's visitor log first. Every person who entered Norfolk General through a non-emergency entrance was logged name time badge or ID type. She went back 4 weeks. She found what she was looking for in 11 minutes. Pembley had signed in 3 visitors in the past month, all on days when the department had been understaffed and busy enough that no one would notice an extra face. The visitors had signed in under different names each time, but the ID type was the same across all 3 entries. A federal contractor credential. The kind of ID that a lot of people had technically, but the kind that a hospital-based facilities coordinator had absolutely no reason to be hosting. Federal contractor, military adjacent, access to federal systems. She thought about the intercept, about who had the clearance level to send it in the encryption format Orvath had described. She thought about Kellyan. She sat back. Her brain was doing that thing it did sometimes, the things she'd learned to trust, even when she couldn't fully explain it yet, where a pattern assembled itself just below the level of articulate thought, and what surfaced wasn't a conclusion, but a certainty, the kind you feel in your sternum before you can put words to it. This isn't just about Hatchet Gale, she thought. This is about what Hatchet Gale revealed. She pulled up one more file. The hospital's security footage log, not the footage itself, she didn't have time, but the access record. Who had pulled footage in the last 30 days? Pembley's ID number appeared 4 times. She logged out, wiped the session, and stood up. 2 minutes and 30 seconds in the server room. She'd been counting. She was back on the ground floor in 4 minutes, moving toward the break room when she turned the corner and nearly walked straight into Dr. Aaron Kessler. Kessler was the attending physician for the evening shift. Tall, chronically exhausted looking, and one of those people who filled silences with words because silence made him anxious. Under normal circumstances, Threnody managed him with practiced ease. Tonight he was the last person she wanted to see. "Threnody, you're still here." "Just heading out." "Good, because we've got a situation." He fell into step beside her, and there was an energy to him that she'd learned to read over 2 years, not his usual tired but managing energy. Something higher, more agitated. "A patient came in about 20 minutes ago. No ID, no insurance card, claims to have no next of kin. Said she found herself in the parking lot with no memory of how she got here." Threnody kept walking. "That's not unusual," she said. "She's not disoriented. That's what's unusual." Kessler's voice dropped. "She's perfectly coherent. She knows her name. She knows the date she's responsive. She just says she doesn't have any identification and that she's been traveling." He paused. She also asked specifically whether there was a nurse on duty named Threnody Caspian. Threnody stopped walking, turned. She asked for me by name. Kessler looked at her like he was trying to decide if that was as strange as it felt. Is she a friend of yours? A relative? What does she look like? 50s maybe? Short hair, calm, unnervingly calm, honestly. The kind of calm that makes you wonder if someone's going to go very uncalm very quickly. He tilted his head. You know her. Threnity's mind had already pulled two possibilities and was running them simultaneously. A setup or a warning. Those were the only two reasons a woman with no ID and no apparent medical need would walk into this department tonight 40 minutes after Orvath arrived and asked for her by name. Which bay, she said. Bay 7. But Threnody, she's not your patient. She was already moving. Bay 7 had a curtain drawn 3/4 closed, which meant she could hear before she could see. She stopped just outside, close enough to listen, far enough to remain invisible. The woman inside was talking to a medical assistant named Gus, who was trying to take her vitals and clearly having a stilted conversation about it. Blood pressure looks good, Gus was saying. I'd imagine so, the woman said. Her voice was even, dry almost, like someone who found the situation mildly inconvenient but not particularly alarming. Can I get you anything, water? I'll wait for Threnody. Gus paused. You know her? Bah. We have a mutual friend. Something about the way she said it, not a friend, a mutual friend with that particular emphasis made the back of Threnity's neck tighten. That was operational language. That was the way people who'd been trained talked even when they were trying to sound casual. The casualness was part of the training. This woman had been trained. Threnody pushed the curtain back and walked in. The woman looked at her the way you look at someone you've been given a photograph of, confirming, calibrating. Threnody Caspian, the woman said. That's right. She kept her voice even, professional. I understand you were asking for me. I don't believe we've met. No, the woman said. We haven't. My name is Sarah Vell. She said it without hesitation, which meant it was either her real name or a very well-constructed alias. I knew Marcus Harmon. Threnody didn't move, didn't blink. I'm sorry for your loss, she said, the standard thing, the thing that revealed nothing. He left a message, Sarah said, before he died, for the person they'd be coming for next. She met Threnity's eyes. He said you'd know what to do with it. I don't know what he said, Sarah continued, lowering her voice, to tell you that the file you're looking for isn't in any system. It never was. He kept it the old way. She paused. He said you'd understand that. Threnody understood it immediately. Harmon had always been a paperman. It was a standing joke in the team. The only person who still believed a printed document in a locked box was more secure than any encrypted server. Can't hack what doesn't plug in, he used to say. She believed him now. What does the file contain? Threnody said. Names, Sarah said quietly. The real names. The people who ordered the ambush. Not who carried it out, who ordered it. Harmon put it together after the mission when he started seeing the pattern. He gave me a copy to hold because he knew that if anything happened to him, whoever came next in line wouldn't survive long enough to find it. She looked at Threnody steadily. He said you were the only one smart enough and careful enough to still be breathing. A beat. Threnody thought about Harmon, about his big laugh and his terrible coffee and the way he'd held the team together in the worst moments of Hatchet Gale with nothing but stubbornness and black humor. About the fact that he was dead, that they were all dead, that she was sitting in a hospital bay listening to a stranger tell her that the man who'd been her team lead had spent the last 4 years quietly gathering evidence of a conspiracy that had gotten him killed. She thought about the fact that she'd spent those same 4 years trying to disappear. Where is the file? She said. Sarah reached into the pocket of her jacket, slowly, deliberately, with the practiced care of someone who understood why sudden movements in tense situations were bad manners, and produced a small object. A key. Old-fashioned brass, the kind that opened a safety deposit box or a lockbox or a desk drawer. There's a storage facility, she said. I can give you the address. Threnody took the key. Her fingers closed around it. And that's when she heard the footsteps. Not the normal traffic of the department, not the rubber-soled, purposeful rhythm of nurses and techs. Something different. 2 sets moving in tandem and stopping just outside the curtain. She didn't look at the curtain. She looked at Sarah. and Sarah's face had done something that told her everything. The calm was gone. "You were followed," Threnody said, low and flat. "I was careful. You were followed." She stood up, put herself between Sarah and the curtain, and processed in real time. Two people outside. They hadn't come in yet, which meant either they were waiting for something or they wanted her to walk out. Both options were bad. The bay had one exit the curtain and no window accessible from the inside. She pulled out her phone. No call. A text to a number she hadn't used in 3 years but still had memorized because some numbers you don't let yourself forget. Break room, now. Use the service hallway. She hit send and pocketed the phone. "Stay here," she said to Sarah. "Don't open that curtain for anyone who isn't me." "What are you going to—" "Stay here." She stepped to the curtain, took a breath, pulled it back. Two men, dressed in civilian clothes, good civilian clothes, the kind that looked completely unremarkable until you noticed how they stood, how their hands hung at their sides, how their eyes moved the way eyes move when they've been trained not to rest anywhere too long. They were looking at her like they'd expected someone else to come through that curtain. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" she said. The taller one recovered first. "We're looking for a patient, a woman who came in earlier." "We have a lot of patients," Threnody said pleasantly. "You'll need to check with the front desk. HIPAA regulations." "We're not family," the shorter one said, and there was something in the way he said it that wasn't quite right. Too flat, too quick. "We're colleagues. She has a medical condition. We just want to make sure she's—" "Front desk," Threnody said again. The smile she gave them was the warmest, most immovable thing in the department. "That's the process. I'm sure they'll be happy to help." A beat, a long beat, the kind where people are weighing options. Then the taller one gave a small nod. "Of course, thanks." They turned and walked away. She watched them go and clocked two things simultaneously. The direction they were moving was toward the main exit, and neither of them had gone to the front desk. They weren't leaving. They were repositioning. She had maybe 4 minutes. She turned and walked fast, not running, never running, because running changed the energy of a room, and she needed this room to stay ordinary back toward the service corridor that connected the bays to the supply area, and from there to the administrative wing, and from there to the break room. The key was tight in her hand. 3 names, a key, a storage facility, and somewhere behind her, 2 men who'd been sent to make sure she didn't leave the building with any of it. She thought about Orvath waiting in the break room. She thought about Pambly at the terminal. She thought about Dana and her furrowed brow. She thought about the intercept with her badge number and her parking spot and the name Kestrel printed in black on white in an encrypted file sent by someone inside. She thought about how the walls of a life she'd spent 2 years building were closing in from every direction simultaneously. And then she stopped thinking about it because thinking about it wasn't useful. Doing something about it was useful. She pushed open the service corridor door. The break room was 20 feet ahead. She'd given herself 4 minutes. She had 2 left. She pushed through the break room door with exactly 1 second to spare before the sound of footsteps rounded the far end of the service corridor. Orvath was on his feet the moment she came in. He'd been pacing, she could tell from the way he was standing slightly off-center, the practiced stillness of a man who just forced himself to stop moving. His eyes went to her face first, then to her hands the way a soldier's eyes always did. Reading the situation before a word was spoken. "We have company," she said. She didn't stop moving. She went straight to the window above the utility sink. Check the angle, check the drop, check the distance to the access road below. 2 men, civilian cover, military posture. They came in through the main entrance about 6 minutes after you did. "They followed me," Orvath said. It wasn't a question. The way he said it quiet-gutted told her he'd already suspected it and had been hoping he was wrong. "They followed someone," she said. "Maybe you, maybe Sarah." "Who is Sarah?" "She was Harmon's contingency plan." Threnody held up the key. He kept a file, physical, off-system, names of the people who ordered the Ramaj Island ambush. Not the operatives, the architects. He gave this to Sarah to hold in case something happened to him. Orvath stared at the key. The color in his face shifted, not quite pale, but the flush of a man absorbing something that confirmed his worst fear and answered a question he'd been carrying for 4 years simultaneously. "He knew," Orvath said. "He knew before any of this started." "He knew and he didn't tell us," Threnody said. which means he was protecting someone, or protecting us from something we weren't ready to know yet. She pocketed the key. We need to move. Not out the front, those two are repositioning. The parking structure exit is compromised if they came in a vehicle, which they did. So we go through supply out the loading dock east side of the building. What about Sarah? She stays put until I send someone to move her. She pulled out her phone again, hesitated, then put it back. Actually, no. No phones. If they're sophisticated enough to track encrypted military intercepts, they're sophisticated enough to ping active devices. She looked at Orvath. Give me yours. My phone now. He handed it over. She powered it down, pulled the battery old model, thank God, the kind that still let you do that, and set both pieces on the counter. Mine stays on, she said. One device, one signal. If they're tracking, they'll track one point of movement. That's more manageable. She looked at him hard. Can you move fast? I'm 63, not dead, he said. Good. Stay close. Don't talk unless I ask you something directly. And whatever you see me do in the next 20 minutes, don't react to it. Not out loud, not on your face. Can you do that? I commanded 3 carrier groups, he said. I think I can manage my expressions. You screamed my code name in a public emergency department, she said flatly. I'm asking anyway. He had the dignity not to argue. She opened the break room door and moved. The supply corridor ran the length of the ground floor's east wing, and at this hour it was quiet in the specific echoey way of institutional spaces. After business hours, not empty, but emptied, the daytime traffic gone and replaced by the occasional solo worker or rolling cart. Threnody moved through it with Orvath a half step behind her, and she was thinking about 3 things at once, the 2 men repositioning. Near the front Pembley, in whatever communication he was still running on that terminal, and the loading dock, which she'd used exactly twice in 2 years, and which had a staff entrance code, she was 90% certain hadn't been changed since the last facilities update. 90% was not 100%. She was aware of that. They were halfway down the corridor when she heard the distinct click and hiss of the stairwell door at the far end opening. Not from above, from below, from the basement. She put her hand back, palm flat. Stop. Orvath stopped. She listened. One set of footsteps. Measured. Coming up from the basement level with the particular rhythm of someone who knew where they were going and wasn't in a hurry because they were certain. That certainty was the problem. She turned sideways, pressed close to the wall beside a supply closet, and tried the handle. Locked. She tried the next one. Also locked. The footsteps were getting closer. She made a decision. The same kind of decision she'd made in worse places than this, the kind that felt reckless in retrospect, but in the moment was just arithmetic. Available options versus available time equals the only move that works. She stepped back out into the center of the corridor, squared her shoulders, and walked directly toward the sound. Orvath, to his credit, stayed exactly where she'd left him. The man who came through the stairwell door was not one of the 2 from earlier. He was younger, shorter. Dressed in the light blue of a hospital maintenance contractor, carrying a clipboard that he was looking at when he came through the door, and he nearly walked into her. Whoa, sorry. He stepped back, looked up. His eyes went to her badge. Sorry about that, I wasn't... It's fine, she said. Nurse voice, warm, slightly distracted professional. You're on the basement rotation tonight. Yeah, finishing up the HVAC check on the east units. He glanced past her. Saw Orvath standing in the corridor. The glance lasted maybe a half-second too long. He's with facilities management, Threnody said easily. Inspector review. They've been going all day. I think they're wrapping up. She gave him a tired smile. How much longer do you have? Another hour maybe. Okay, don't forget to sign out at the security desk when you're done. They've been strict about that lately. He nodded. He moved past her. He didn't look back. She waited until she heard the door at the other end of the corridor open and close before she exhaled. Then she turned to Orvath. Move, she said. Now. The loading dock code worked. She felt the specific silent relief of a gamble paying off 90% to 100 in under a second, and they were out moving across the service road into the relative cover of the east parking area. The night air was cold. She hadn't grabbed her jacket in the right order. It was balled under her arm rather than on her, and she didn't stop to fix it. Orvath was breathing harder than she liked, but keeping up. "Where are we going?" he said. "My car is in 14C. We're not going to my car." She turned left away from the main structure. "I have a secondary vehicle, 2 blocks east. Gray Civic 2019 registered to a name you don't know." He didn't ask how or why she had a secondary vehicle registered under a name he didn't know. That was the moment she decided she still respected him. They moved in silence for a block and a half. Then Orvath said low and even, "The two men inside. Do you know who sent them or them? I have a strong hypothesis. Kellyan. Kellyan, as she confirmed, or someone running Kellyan, because here's what's been bothering me since you showed me that intercept." She didn't slow her pace. The intercept was military-grade encryption. That's a finite universe of people with access to that system. You were one of them. Kellyan was one of them. But the content of that intercept, my badge number, my work schedule, my parking spot, that's not signals intelligence. That's human intelligence. Someone in that building has been feeding information to whoever encrypted that message. Pembley, Orvath said. Pembley's the collection mechanism, she said. He's not the architect. He's not sophisticated enough, and he's not senior enough. He's a courier with a hospital badge. She stopped at the corner, checked both directions. Someone recruited Pembley specifically because they needed eyes inside Norfolk General specifically, which means they knew I was here before Pembley started working here. Orvath processed that. She could hear him processing it, the small sound people made when a piece of information arrived that reordered everything they thought they understood. 16 months, he said. You said Pembley had been with us hospital 16 months. That's right. That's 6 months after I submitted the internal inquiry about Hatchet Gale. She stopped walking, turned to look at him. You submitted an inquiry. Orvath's jaw tightened, informally, through internal channels. I had concerns about the official report. I raised them quietly with people I trusted. With people you trusted. She said it without heat, but the weight of it was there. Orvath, you raised questions about Hatchet Gale through internal channels 6 months before someone placed a surveillance asset in the building where I was hiding, and you didn't think those two things might be connected. I didn't know where you were, he said. I didn't know the inquiry would. Someone found out you were asking questions, she said, and instead of coming after you because coming after a sitting admiral creates too much noise, they went after the team. One by one, starting with the most senior working down. She looked at him. You started this, inadvertently, but you started it. The silence between them was not comfortable. I know, he said. He said it quietly and without defense, and she believed him. I know, that's why I'm here. That's why I came myself instead of sending someone. He met her eyes. I owe you. I owe all of you. She held his gaze for another moment. Then she turned and kept walking. The Civic is on the next block, she said. Once we're in, I need you to think very carefully and tell me every name you mentioned in that internal inquiry. Every person you talked to, every back channel you used. That could be a long list. We have a 20-minute drive, she said. Start now. She was wrong about the 20 minutes. They made it to the car. She got the door open, got Orvath in the passenger seat, got herself behind the wheel, and then her phone buzzed. One text, unknown number. 3 words, don't leave yet. She stared at it. Orvath leaned over. Read it, said nothing. She texted back, who is this? 8 seconds. Then base 7. She's not safe. Her hand went tight on the phone. Sarah. She told Sarah to stay in base 7. She told her not to open the curtain for anyone who wasn't her. She typed, is this Sarah? The reply came back faster this time. No, someone who's been watching this longer than you think. Go back. Use the west entrance. You have 4 minutes. Orvath said, it could be a trap. Of course it could be a trap, she said. She was already out of the car. The west entrance was a staff-only door that required a badge swipe and a 4-digit PIN. She had both. She was through it in 12 seconds, moving fast now, not running, still not running, but the kind of controlled urgency that looked like purposeful walking unless you were very close and very perceptive. Base 7 was at the far end of the emergency department floor, separated from the west entrance by the full width of the building and the nursing station in the main triage area. She counted the ways something could go wrong between here and there and stopped counting at 6 because the number wasn't useful. She passed the nursing station. Dana looked up. Threnody. I'll be 1 minute, she said. If Dr. Kessler asks, I'm checking on Bay 7. She pushed through before Dana could answer. The curtain on Bay 7 was fully closed now. She'd left it 3/4. That was wrong. That was the wrong position, and it made her stomach go tight in the specific animal way of a threat that hasn't fully revealed itself yet. She stopped outside. Listened. Nothing. Too quiet. She took a breath, pushed the curtain back. Sarah was still in the bay, sitting in the same position, same hands, same posture. But her eyes were different. The unnerving calm from before was still there, but underneath it now was something else. Something careful, like a person who had just been told something and was deciding whether to believe it. Standing in the far corner of the bay, in the small space between the equipment cart and the wall, was a woman Threnody had never seen before. Late 40s, dressed in business casual, the kind of outfit that read as completely unremarkable in any professional environment. Her hands were visible deliberately, the way you keep your hands visible when you want someone to know you're not holding anything. Threnody Caspian, the woman said. She had the voice of someone who'd given briefings to rooms full of difficult people and had learned to start from a position of calm authority. My name is Reyes. I've been embedded in this city for 11 months running parallel surveillance on the same people who are watching you. Parallel surveillance for whom, Threnody said. For an oversight body that doesn't have a public name, Reyes said, which I know sounds exactly like what someone would say if they were lying. So let me offer you something more concrete. She reached slowly into her jacket, hands still visible movements, telegraphed, and produced a folded document. This is a partial copy of the same intercept Admiral Orvath showed you tonight. The version you saw had redacted names. This one doesn't. Threnody didn't reach for it immediately. Why does your copy have the unredacted names? Because I'm not the one who redacted them, Reyes said. Orvath's copy came through Kellyan's office. Kellyan redacted the names before he handed it over. She held the document steady. Because one of the names on that list is Kellyan. The bay went very still. Threnody looked at the document. She took it. She read it. The names were there. 4 of them. 3 she recognized from the military establishment. Senior figures, people with enough rank and enough access to have ordered an operation like Hatchet Gale and then buried what it revealed. People with enough power to eliminate a 4-person field team one by one and dress each death as an accident. And the 4th name, Director Elias Kellyan. She'd suspected it. She'd said it to Orvath in the break room in different words. Whoever is doing this knows the system from the inside. But suspecting something and seeing it printed on a page were 2 entirely different things, and for a moment the weight of it was physical. 4 years, 3 people dead, all of it funneling back to a name she could now say out loud. Orvath doesn't know, she said. It wasn't a question. No, Reyes said. He went to Kellyan in good faith when he started his inquiry, and Kellyan used that inquiry to identify who was still out there. She paused. The Admiral isn't compromised. He's been used. There's a difference. Threnody folded the document, put it in her pocket alongside Harmon's key. What do you want? She said to Reyes. The same thing you want, Reyes said. The file Harmon kept. Combined with this, she gestured at Threnody's pocket. It builds a complete picture. Names, orders, chain of command. Enough to go over Kellyan's head and every head connected to him. Enough that it can't be buried again. And why do you need me for that? Reyes looked at her steadily. Because you're the only surviving member of the team that carried out the mission those names are attached to. Your testimony, combined with the documentary evidence, is what makes it undeniable. She paused. Dead witnesses can be explained away. Living ones are significantly harder to manage. Sarah spoke for the first time since Threnody had walked in. She's telling the truth, she said. I've been talking to her for the last 8 minutes. She knew things about Harmon that weren't in any file I'm aware of. She looked at Threnody directly. She knew about the box, where he kept it. She knew before I told her. Threnody looked at Reyes. The 2 men inside, she said, the ones who came in after Orvath. Are they yours? No, Reyes said. They're Kellyan's, which is why you need to decide in the next approximately 90 seconds. Because they've been watching Base 7 since I walked in, and the only reason they haven't moved is because This area still has enough foot traffic to make a move complicated. She held Threnodi's gaze. Once the department quiets down, that changes. 90 seconds. Threnody looked at Sarah, looked at Reyes, looked at the document in her own pocket. She thought about Harmon, who'd spent 4 years building a case and died before he could use it. She thought about Ewan and Devereaux, who hadn't even known they were targets until it was too late. She thought about the key in her pocket and the storage facility it opened, and the names on the paper and the Admiral sitting in a gray Civic 2 blocks away, who didn't yet know that the man he'd gone to for help had been hunting his team from behind a desk. She thought about the version of herself that had taken 12 steps toward the exit every night for 2 years, counting them without thinking, keeping the door in sight. Then she stopped thinking about that version. "Okay," she said, "here's what we're going to do." She looked at Reyes, then at Sarah. The calm in her voice was not the performed calm of a woman holding herself together. It was the real kind, the kind that came from the other side of fear, from the place where the decision had already been made, and all that was left was execution. "Reyes, you're going to walk out of this bay and go to the nurse's station and tell them you think you're having a cardiac event. Use the words chest pain and left arm. That will pull every available person in this wing to that station within 60 seconds. She held up a hand before Reyes could object. "I know you're fine. They'll figure that out too. But 60 seconds is what I need, and a cardiac alarm is the only thing in this building that moves people faster than a fire." Reyes looked at her. Something in her expression shifted, not quite respect, but the precursor to it. The moment of recognizing someone who knows exactly what they're doing. "And then," Reyes said, "and then Sarah and I are going to walk out of this department the same way I came in," Threnody said. "And we are going to drive to that storage facility, and we are going to get Harmon's file." She looked at both of them. "And then every name on every document in my possession is going to be in the hands of people who cannot be touched by Kellyan or anyone connected to him." "You know people like that," Sarah said. Threnody thought about it for exactly 1 second. "I'm about to find out," she said. Rhea straightened, gave a single clean nod, turned to the curtain, and stopped. "One more thing," she said without turning back. "The man at the IT terminal, Pembley. What about him?" "He just sent a message," Reyes said. 11 minutes ago, I intercepted it. He told Kellyan's people that you spoke with the Admiral, that you accessed the secondary server room, and that you're in possession of something from a contact in Base 7. She finally turned. "They're not repositioning anymore. They're consolidating." Her voice was level, precise, and completely without alarm, which was somehow more frightening than if she'd shouted it. "They're going to move in the next 10 minutes, maybe less." 10 minutes, Threnody stood in Base 7 of the Norfolk General Emergency Department with a brass key and a classified document and the lives of 3 dead people behind her and the truth of what happened at Ramage Island ahead of her. And she felt not fear exactly, not even adrenaline, something older than both. Something that had been waiting quietly for 3 years under 12 steps in Spot 14C, and a borrowed name waiting for the exact moment when there was no more room to stay invisible. "Then we don't have 10 minutes to stand here," she said. She looked at Reyes. "Go." Reyes walked out of Base 7 like a woman who had just remembered something important, which was exactly the right energy, purposeful, without urgency, moving with the slightly distracted air of someone whose mind was elsewhere. Threnody watched her go and started counting in her head. Not seconds, heartbeats, slower, more reliable under pressure. She looked at Sarah. "Can you walk?" "I've been walking fine this whole time," Sarah said with a dryness that reminded Threnody briefly painfully of Harmon. "I came in pretending to be a patient. I'm not actually one." "Good. When the alarm goes, you stay on my left side slightly behind. You match my pace exactly, not faster, not slower. If I stop, you stop. If I move, you move. You don't speak to anyone." She held Sarah's gaze. "Nod if you understand." Sarah nodded. 14 heartbeats. Then from the direction of the nurse's station, a voice, Reyes's voice, pitched perfectly, not too theatrical, not too calm, exactly the frequency of genuine alarm. "I need help. My chest. I think something's wrong. My arm." And then the department responded the way it always responded to those words, the way it was trained and built and designed to respond, which was immediately and completely. Every available person in the wing moved toward that station like iron filings toward a magnet, and the corridor cleared in the space of 30 seconds. Threnody stepped out of Bay 7 with Sarah one step behind her left shoulder. She walked like she belonged here. She had always walked like she belonged here. The west entrance was 30 feet away, 20, 10. She had her badge out before they reached the door and swiped it in one continuous motion, not slowing, and they were through before the lock had fully disengaged, moving into the corridor beyond, and then out the staff door, and then they were outside in the cold and moving east toward the Civic. She didn't exhale until she could see the car. Orvath was exactly where she'd left him, passenger seat, hands on his knees, watching the approach with the focused stillness of a man who had spent 30 years being ready for things to go wrong. She got in. Sarah took the back. "Who is she?" Orvath said, looking at Sarah in the rear view. "Later," Threnody said. She started the engine. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear it without reacting until I'm done." She pulled out of the parking space and turned east. "Kellyan is on the list." Silence. "The intercept," she said. "The redacted names. Kellyan redacted his own name before he handed you that document. He's one of the 4 architects of the Ramaj Island ambush. He's been running the operation to eliminate the team from behind his desk at the agency for the past 3 weeks. She paused. "You went to him with your inquiry. He used your inquiry to find us." She felt more than saw the moment it landed, not the sharp intake of breath of someone surprised, something quieter. The particular stillness of a man who had just had confirmed what some part of him had been refusing to consider. "How sure are you?" he said. His voice was controlled. "Barely. I have a document with his name on it," she said. "Unredacted, from an independent source who's been running parallel surveillance for 11 months. She glanced at him. "I'm sure." Another silence. Longer. "I've known Elias Kellyan for 22 years, Orvath said. "I know. We served together. His daughter—" He stopped, pressed his lips together. "His daughter called me when she graduated from Annapolis." Threnody said nothing. She let him have the moment because there were moments that needed to be had, and fighting them was a waste of energy. Orvath was not a weak man. He would process and then he would function. She'd seen it before. She was counting on it again. 22 years, he said again to no one in particular. "I'm sorry," she said, and she meant it. Then she said, "I need every name from your inquiry. Right now, we have about 8 minutes before whoever is still in that building figures out that we're gone." He exhaled slowly, and then with the mechanical precision of a man forcing himself back from the edge of something and into usefulness, he started to talk. The storage facility was on the eastern edge of the city in an industrial block that was busy enough during the day to be anonymous and quiet enough at night to be empty. Threnody had driven past it twice in 2 years without registering it consciously, which she now understood had been deliberate on Harmon's part. He wouldn't have picked anything with the high foot traffic profile. He'd have picked something boring and overlooked something that wouldn't attract attention, no matter how long a key sat in a lockbox. She parked 2 blocks away. Old habit. "Sarah," she said. "The address, the unit number." Sarah gave it to her without hesitation. She'd memorized it, which meant Harmon had briefed her carefully. You didn't memorize an address unless someone had told you to. "Did Harmon tell you what was in the file specifically?" "He said it was enough," Sarah said. "He said that was all I needed to know. That when I found the right person, they'd know what to do with it." "He trusted you with something he wouldn't tell you," Threnody said. "He trusted me with the key," Sarah said quietly. "He said the key was the only part that mattered. The file could survive on its own. He needed the key to survive in the right hands." She paused. "He talked about you. He didn't use your name, but the way he described the person, careful, methodical, the kind of person who counts the steps to every exit without realizing they're doing it." She met Threnodi's eyes in the mirror. "He said you'd be the last one standing." He said it like he was certain. Threnody looked at the road. "He was wrong about Ewan and Devereaux," she said. "He was right about you." She didn't respond to that. She pulled her jacket on properly for the first time all night and looked at Orvath. "You stay with the car." "Absolutely not." "Orvath, 2 of my people are dead because I put them in positions where I couldn't protect them," he said. "I am not sitting in a car 2 blocks away while you walk into a dark storage unit alone." She looked at him for a moment. decided it wasn't worth the argument. Fine. Sarah, you stay with the car. Sarah nodded without argument, and Threnody understood that Harmon had briefed her on that too. When you find the right person, do what they tell you. He'd been thorough even in his preparation for his own death. She and Orvath got out. The unit was in the middle row, which meant it wasn't visible from the front entrance or the street, which meant Harmon had requested that placement specifically. She was certain of it. The key fit clean and smooth, maintained not stiff, which meant either the lock was new or someone had been here recently, and she stopped with the key half-turned. What? Orvath said. This lock was maintained, she said. Instantly. Either Harmon came here within the last few months or someone else did. She finished turning the key, slowly. Listening for anything wrong and hearing nothing, she lifted the door. The unit was small and held almost nothing. A metal shelf unit on the back wall, mostly empty. And on the middle shelf, a document lockbox, the kind with a combination dial, dark gray, exactly the type of hardware store purchase that left no digital trail. Threnody looked at it. Do you know the combination? Orvath said. No, she said. But Harmon used the same methodology for everything. He built his systems around dates that meant something to the team, not to him personally. She crouched in front of the box. Ramaj Island, the date we inserted. She dialed the combination from memory. The box clicked open. Inside was a single folder. Manila unmarked on the outside, held closed with a rubber band that had started to go brittle. She took it out with both hands, stepped back into the ambient light from the parking area, and opened it. The documents inside were what Harmon had always been: methodical, layered, excruciatingly sourced. Communications logs with dates and times, copies of authorization orders bearing signatures she recognized. An internal memo written 4 months before the Ramaj Island mission that outlined in bureaucratic language, stripped of any moral weight, the precise reason the field team had been set up to fail. She read that part twice. The mission hadn't gone wrong. The mission had been designed to go wrong. The ambush wasn't an intelligence failure. It was an intelligence operation run by the same people who'd authorized Hatchet Gale in the first place, using the chaos of a failed mission to eliminate a team that had gotten close enough to an operation they weren't supposed to know existed. She stood with the folder in her hands and felt the specific cold clarity of a truth that reorders everything. They sent us in knowing we'd be hit, she said. Not a question, not disbelief, just the sound of 4 years of quiet dread being confirmed. What does it say? Orvath's voice had gone very controlled. She handed him the folder, watched his face as he read, watched the moment, the exact moment when the gravity of it hit him. His jaw tightened. Something moved through his eyes that she didn't try to name, because some things didn't need names. There's a second document, he said, not looking up, behind the memo. She hadn't gotten that far. She took the folder back and turned to the second document, and stopped. It was a photograph. Surveillance quality, printed on plain paper. It showed a hallway she recognized, the administrative wing of a federal building she had been inside exactly once for a debrief after Hatchet Gale. In the hallway, shaking hands, were 2 people. One of them was Kellyan. The other one she hadn't expected. Her mind went quiet in the way it only went quiet when a piece of information arrived that was so large it temporarily displaced everything else. Orvath, she said, very carefully, in your internal inquiry, your back channels. She held up the photograph. Did you go through Commander Parrish, his aide, the person who'd known he was coming to Norfolk tonight? He looked at the photograph. He looked at it for a long time. Commander Parrish, standing beside Elias Kellyan, in a federal hallway 2 weeks after the Hatchet Gale debrief, with the particular ease of people who knew each other well. He's been with me for 4 years, Orvath said. The words came out strange, flat in the way that very deep things sometimes sounded flat. 4 years, she said, since right after Hatchet Gale. He recommended himself through, Orvath stopped. Through Kellyan's office. He came with a recommendation from Kellyan's office. There it was, not just a leak inside the agency, a plant inside Orvath's own staff, someone who had been positioned directly beside him for 4 years, managing his schedule, controlling his access, knowing every move he made and reporting all of it back. He knew you were coming here tonight, Threnody said. I told him this afternoon. I said I had a lead on a surviving team member and that I was going to follow it personally. He looked at her with the expression of a man who just understood the full architecture of his own compromise. I told him I'd be out of contact for the evening, which is why the two men were already in position when you arrived, she said. You weren't followed here, but Parrish told them where to go. She closed the folder. And it means they know about the storage unit, not the location. They don't have the key, but they know about Harmon's file. Parrish would have had access to everything Kellyanne knew. The moment stretched. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Not the same one as before, a different one, a single image file. She opened it. It was a photograph of the gray Civic, parked 2 blocks from the storage facility, taken from close range within the last 10 minutes. And visible through the passenger window, face turned slightly away but still identifiable Sarah. Below the image, a message. You have something that belongs to certain people. Return the folder and the key. The woman in the car stays safe. You have 15 minutes. Threnody read it twice. Then she showed it to Orvath. He read it. His expression went hard in a way she hadn't seen all night. Not grief, not shock, not the weight of betrayal. Something older and colder than all of those. They're escalating, he said. They're panicking, she said. There's a difference. She pocketed the phone. Panicking people make mistakes. We need to make them make one right now. She was already moving back toward the car. They said 15 minutes, Orvath said, keeping pace. I know. And you're walking toward the car they just photographed. I know. Threnody. If they wanted Sarah, they'd have taken her instead of photographing her, she said. They photographed her because she's more useful as leverage than as a target, which means they don't have enough people on the ground to manage both a grab and a confrontation with us simultaneously. She turned a corner. The Civic was visible ahead. Sarah was still in the back seat, and someone was crouched near the driver's side, and it was not one of the 2 men from the hospital. It was Pembley. He was trying the door handle with the focused, concentrated effort of someone who'd been told to secure the vehicle and was discovering that car locks worked exactly as designed. He hadn't heard them yet. She stopped, put her hand back. Orvath stopped. She handed him the folder. Hold this. Then she handed him the document with Kellyanne's name. And this? What are you doing? Something that looks much riskier than it is, she said. Stay here until I call you. That is not a plan. Orvath. She turned and looked at him with the full weight of everything she was and everything she knew, and everything she'd spent 4 years becoming while hiding inside a borrowed name. Trust me. He looked at her, and despite everything, despite the folder, the photograph, the betrayal, the 22 years of a friendship that had just turned to dust in his hands, he nodded. She turned and walked toward Pembley. She didn't hurry. She walked at her normal pace the way she walked a hospital corridor, and she called out when she was still 8 feet away, because surprising people who were already tense was how situations became unmanageable. Marcus! He spun around. His eyes went wide, the eyes of a person whose plan has just come apart in a specific and unexpected direction. He'd clearly expected to be done and gone before she came back. He hadn't expected her to be walking toward him calmly with her hands visible and her voice steady. What are you doing? She said, conversationally, like she was asking why he was refilling his coffee at the wrong station. He straightened up, tried to reassemble something. I saw this car. I thought the plates looked wrong. I was going to... Marcus, she said, stop. He stopped. How long? She said. He looked at her. The performance collapsed. Not because he was weak, she didn't think he was particularly, but because there was something in her voice that made pretending feel like more effort than it was worth. She'd seen it happen before. There was a specific quality of certainty that, when you aimed it at someone, made the lie feel heavier than the truth. 14 months, he said, quietly, like he was confessing something at the end of a very long day. Who recruited you? I don't know his real name. But you knew what you were doing. A pause. Yes. You knew people were being killed. He didn't answer that one, which was its own answer. She took a step closer. Harmon, Ewan, Devereaux, you helped them die, Marcus. Maybe not directly, but the information you passed made it possible. She kept her voice even, not harsh, almost gentle in the particular way that the truth was sometimes gentle, not kind but honest enough to be respected. And now someone sent you here to take a woman out of a car as collateral. I was just supposed to secure the vehicle, he said. His voice had gone slightly unsteady. Nobody told me anything about a woman. Nobody told you, she repeated, just like nobody told you exactly what would happen to the people you were reporting on. The silence between them was not hostile. It was something more uncomfortable than that. It was the silence of a person standing at the exact moment when they understand what they've been part of fully, without the insulation of not knowing. I have children, he said abruptly, out of nowhere. The way people said things that had been sitting at the front of their chest all night, waiting for the pressure to break. I know, she said. He stopped, looked at her. They threatened them. Not at first. At first, it was just information. Schedules, badge numbers, nothing that felt like, and then it was too late to stop. And then they made sure it was too late. His voice was steadier now, which she recognized as not composure, but something past it, the flat ground on the other side of genuine distress. I'm not asking you to understand. I'm not here to judge you, she said. I'm here to give you a choice. She met his eyes. You tell me exactly what you sent tonight, exactly who received it, and every communication you've had with Kellyan's people since you started at Norfolk General. All of it. Right now. She paused. And I make sure your name is in the right column when this is over. He looked at her for a long moment, and she watched the calculation happen, not the cold strategic calculation of a trained operative, but the messy human calculation of someone weighing one kind of fear against another. If I talked, he said, they'll know it was me. They already think you failed, she said. The door's locked. Sarah's still in the car. Whatever you were supposed to do here, you didn't do it. Your window with them is already closing. She held his gaze. Your window with me is the one that's still open. Another silence, shorter this time. Kellyan has a secondary team, Pembley said. 3 people. They're not in the building. They've been staged outside 2 blocks west of the hospital since 8 o'clock tonight. He said it in the steady, deliberate way of someone choosing to commit to a direction and going all in. They were waiting for confirmation from the men inside that you'd been located. When that confirmation didn't come cleanly, Kellyan ordered a consolidation. Everything moves to this location in... He checked his watch. 7 minutes. 7 minutes. She absorbed it without showing it. Is Parrish with them? She said. Pembley's eyes shifted just slightly. You know about Parrish. Is he with them? He's been running point from a location I don't have. He's not on the ground. Does Kellyan know where the file is? He knows it's in this part of the city. He doesn't have a unit number. He has a general radius. He looked at her. He was going to use the woman to get the specifics. She nodded, turned half away from him, thinking fast. 7 minutes, 1 secondary team incoming from the west. Parrish remote but coordinating. Kellyan behind all of it, making calls from somewhere he would never be directly connected to whatever happened tonight. She turned back. Go to the end of this block, she said to Pembley. Turn left. There's a gas station on the corner. Go inside, buy something, sit down, and call 911. Tell them your name and tell them there is an active federal security operation occurring at this location and that civilians are at risk. Use those exact words, then stay inside until you hear sirens. You want me to call the police? I want you to bring noise, she said. Lots of people arriving with lights and radios is the best thing that can happen in the next 5 minutes. Kellyan's people don't move when there's that much visibility. It buys time. He stared at her. Go, she said. He went. She watched him reach the corner and turn before she moved. Then she went to the Civic, knocked twice on the passenger window, not the driver's side, deliberately to signal it was her, and Sarah unlocked the door. Are you hurt? Threnody said. No, Sarah's voice was controlled. There was a man? I know, he's gone. She looked back up the block. We have less than 7 minutes. I need Orvath, and I need you to do exactly what I tell you. She paused. Harmon believed you would hold that key until the right person came. He was right, but holding it was the first part. She met Sarah's eyes. The second part is harder. Sarah looked at her steadily with the particular clarity of someone who had been sitting with this weight for long enough that the moment of action, however dangerous, felt like relief. Tell me what to do, Sarah said. Threnody told her. And the night, which had already been the longest of her life, shifted into something else entirely. Not darker, not lighter, but sharper. The way things got sharp right before they broke, or right before they held. She was betting everything on which one it was going to be. 6 minutes and 40 seconds. That was what she had, not an estimate, a calculation. Pembley had said 7 minutes when he checked his watch, and 30 seconds had already passed in the time it took her to send him to the corner and get back to the car. She was not in the habit of rounding numbers up when precision was the only thing standing between her and a very permanent outcome. She went to Orvath first. He was where she'd left him, folder in both hands, standing with the stillness of a man who had spent the last several minutes doing the internal work of absorbing catastrophe and arriving on the other side of it at something functional. She recognized the look. She'd worn it herself more than once. Parish is remote, she said, coordinating from off-site. Kellyan's secondary team is staged 2 blocks west of the hospital and moving to this location in under 7 minutes. She took the folder from him. We can't run. Running with this much material and this much heat behind us just means they catch us somewhere worse. We need to end it here. Orvath looked at her steadily. How? Light, she said, noise, visibility, everything Kellyan's operation has been built to avoid. She held up her phone. I have one call I can make, one person I'm certain is clean, because Reyes confirmed she ran her own background on every active federal contact in this or that sector before she set up her parallel operation. She looked at him. But I need something from you first. Name it. Your authority, she said. Your rank, your credentials, your 30 years of service to that institution. She held his gaze. When this breaks open tonight, it cannot look like a rogue operative surfacing with stolen documents. It has to come from the inside. It has to come from someone they cannot dismiss. She paused. It has to come from you. Something moved through his expression. Not hesitation, she'd have respected. Hesitation, it would have been honest. This was something more layered. The look of a man standing at the exact intersection of everything he'd built and everything he'd nearly let be destroyed, and understanding that the only way through was to put all of it on the table at once. I spent 30 years building credibility inside that institution, he said. I know. If I attach my name to this tonight formally on the record, it changes everything, she said. Yes. It could end my career. Yes. She didn't soften it. He deserved the real version, or it defines it, permanently, in the only way that actually matters. She paused. Harmon spent 4 years building that file. Ewan and Devereaux died before they knew they were targets. 3 people who served that institution with everything they had were eliminated to protect men who hid behind it. She held his eyes. Your career or their legacy, those are the options. The silence lasted 4 seconds. Make your call, he said. The number she dialed had been given to her 2 years ago by a source she'd never met in person. A contact of a contact passed through 3 degrees of separation with the instruction that it was for genuine emergencies only, and that using it for anything less than genuine would permanently close the channel. She had never used it. She had memorized it the day she received it and never written it down anywhere. And on the nights when she counted 12 steps to the exit and went home to her careful, invisible life, she had sometimes thought about it the way you thought about a fire extinguisher on the wall, grateful it was there deeply, hoping you never needed to reach for it. She reached for it now. It rang twice. A voice answered, male, middle-aged, the alert quality of someone who kept their phone close even at this hour. Yes. This is Kestrel, she said. It was the first time she had said it herself voluntarily since she'd buried it 3 years ago. It felt strange in her mouth. Not wrong exactly, but the way a language you haven't spoken in years felt strange. Familiar and foreign at the same time. I have a compromised director, a military plant documentary evidence of a sanctioned assassination operation against American operatives on domestic soil, and 6 minutes before a secondary team arrives at my location. She said it in one breath, clean and flat. I need federal intervention at the following coordinates, and I need it loud. A pause of exactly 3 seconds. Send the coordinates, the voice said. She sent them. How many in the incoming team? 3 confirmed, possibly more. And on your side, she looked at Orvath. at Sarah watching her from the back seat of the Civic with the quiet focus of someone who had handed over everything she'd been carrying for weeks and was now simply waiting to see what happened next. 3, she said. Sit tight, the voice said. Do not engage unless forced. 12 minutes. The call ended. She turned to Orvath. 12 minutes. We have 6 before they arrive, he said. 7 now, she said. But yes. So we have a gap. Yes. Wonderful, he said with the particular dry resignation of a man who had commanded carrier groups and was now standing in a parking lot waiting to be cornered and found the situation beneath his dignity but entirely manageable. She almost smiled. It surprised her. She told Sarah to get out of the car. If they arrive before the intervention team and they see you in the vehicle, she said, you become a bargaining piece again. On your feet, you're a person who can move. She handed Sarah the folder. You hold this. Not me, not Orvath, you. If anything happens to us, you run, and you don't stop until you reach a public space with witnesses. Nothing is going to happen to you, Mario, Sarah said. Probably not, Threnody said. But Harmon prepared for contingencies, so do I. Sarah took the folder. They moved off the street, away from the car, into the narrow space beside the facility entrance, where they were out of the sight line from the approach route Pembley had described. Orvath on one side, Sarah slightly behind Threnody at the edge, where she could see without being immediately visible. She watched the approach. 4 minutes of nothing, and then headlights. One vehicle coming from the west, moving without urgency, the particular pace of people who thought they were arriving before the situation required urgency. They don't know Pembley failed yet, she said quietly. They think they're coming to collect. How long do we have before they figure out otherwise? Orvath said, equally quiet. About 30 seconds after they stop and no one comes out to meet them. And the intervention team, 8 minutes, maybe 7. So we have a 7-minute conversation to manage. Something like that, she said. The vehicle stopped. Doors open. 3 people, as Pembley had said, 2 men and a woman dressed in the unmarked dark clothing of people who did things they couldn't put their name on. They stood for a moment reading the space, and she could see the moment they registered the empty Civic, the absence of anyone coming to meet them, the particular wrongness of a scene that didn't match the briefing. The woman pulled out a phone, calling Parish Threnody guest, or Kellyan directly, reporting that something was off. She stepped out. I wouldn't make that call, she said loud enough to carry clearly across the space between them, calm enough that it landed with authority rather than desperation. All 3 of them turned. She had her hands visible, open at her sides, no weapon. She hadn't carried a weapon in 3 years, and she wasn't starting tonight because a weapon would have changed the nature of what she was doing, and she needed this to be something specific. She needed it to be undeniable. She needed witnesses in daylight and the kind of confrontation that couldn't be made to look like anything other than what it was. Who are you? The taller man said. You know who I am, she said. Your director has been trying to locate me for 3 years. You came here tonight to prevent me from doing exactly what I've already done. She looked at the woman with the phone. That call goes to Parish or Kellyan. It doesn't matter which. What you need to understand right now is that in approximately 6 minutes, this location is going to have more federal attention than any of you can manage. The documents you were sent to recover are not in this building, they're not in that car, and they are not in my possession. She looked at the folder in Sarah's hands visible beside Orvath now, at the edge of the entrance. They are in the possession of an independent witness under the authority of an active Admiral of the United States Navy who is standing right behind me. Orvath stepped forward, full uniform, gold braid, 30 years of command in the set of his shoulders. He stood beside her and looked at the 3 of them with the expression of a man who had made his decision and found on the other side of it something steady. My name is Admiral Thaddeus Orvath, he said. His voice was the voice of a man addressing a briefing room. Clear, measured caring. What you are looking at is federal evidence in an active inquiry into the conduct of Director Elias Kellyan and Commander Aaron Parish, among others. Any attempt to obstruct, remove, or interfere with that evidence constitutes a federal offense, and I will personally ensure that every individual present tonight is named in the subsequent proceedings. He paused. I suggest you put the phone away. The woman with the phone lowered it, not quickly, slowly, the way people moved when their instructions were colliding with a reality that the instructions hadn't accounted for. These were not improvising people. They were execution people, good at following a clear directive, and the directive had just become significantly less clear. The taller man looked at his colleagues. Something passed between them, not a plan, but the absence of one, which was its own kind of communication. "You don't have authority here," he said, but there was something uncertain in it now, something that hadn't been there when he'd gotten out of the vehicle. "In 6 minutes, I won't need to," Threnody said. 4 minutes and 20 seconds of the most uncomfortable stillness she had experienced in years. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke much. The three of them on one side, her and Orvath and Sarah on the other, and the document in Sarah's hands like the still center of everything. The taller man tried twice more, once to establish that they had legal standing to request the documents, once to suggest that there had been a misunderstanding about the purpose of their arrival tonight. Threnody let both attempts run their course without engaging with them. Engaging would have created the impression that the outcome was still in question. She wanted him to understand, without her having to say so, that the outcome had been settled before he arrived. Orvath said nothing further. He didn't need to. His presence was doing the work that presence did when it was backed by genuine authority and genuine conviction. It occupied space in a way that made everything around it organize itself accordingly. Sarah held the folder with both hands and didn't move and didn't speak, and Threnody thought, not for the first time that night, that Harmon had been right to trust her. She heard the sirens before she saw the lights. 2 vehicles moving fast from the east, then a third from the north. And then 30 seconds after the first siren, a 4th vehicle, unmarked, dark, the kind that didn't need sirens because the kind of people inside it didn't announce themselves until they were already there. The woman with the phone made one final attempt to dial. "Don't," Threnody said. She didn't. What followed was not dramatic in the way that movies made things dramatic. It was the ordered, procedural, intensely serious business of federal intervention, and it was handled by people who were very good at their truths and very uninterested in theater. Credentials were verified. Orvath spoke at length and with precision to a woman in a dark jacket who listened with the focused attention of someone recording everything and filing it immediately. The 3 people from the vehicle were separated, identified, and detained in a manner that was professional and final. Threnody handed over the folder, the photograph, the document with Kellyan's name, the partial transcript Reyes had provided. She gave it all over with the clarity of someone who understood that holding on to evidence was not the same as wielding it, that the power of what Harmon had built was only fully realized when it was in the right hands and completely out of her own. She gave her name, her real name. Not Threnody Caspian, the one on the document she hadn't used in 3 years, that existed in systems she'd been carefully removed from, that belonged to a person she'd thought she might never be again. It came out of her mouth without ceremony, without drama. It just landed in the air, solid and true, like something that had been waiting patiently to be said. The woman in the dark jacket wrote it down. Orvath found her an hour later, standing apart from the controlled activity around the storage facility, her jacket properly on, for once her hands in her pockets. The night was cold enough that she could see her own breath. She was counting nothing. There were no steps to count, no exits to locate, no routines to maintain. For the first time in a very long time, she was simply standing somewhere without a system for it. He stood beside her. "Parrish is in custody," he said. "They picked him up at a hotel on the north side." He didn't resist. A pause. "Kellyan has been unreachable since 9 o'clock tonight. They're looking." "They'll find him," she said. "People like Kellyan think they have more exits than they do." "The inquiry will be formal," Orvath said. "Full congressional review. It won't be fast." "It doesn't need to be fast," she said. "It needs to be complete." "Yes." He was quiet for a moment. "Reyes's oversight body, they're legitimate. I've been briefed. They've been building a parallel case for over a year. Your evidence combined with theirs is—" He stopped, searched for the word. "It's conclusive. The kind of conclusive that doesn't leave room for revision." She nodded. "Harmon knew what he was doing," she said. "He always did," Orvath said, "even when the rest of us hadn't caught up yet." He looked at her. "I'm sorry for the inquiry, for Parrish, for walking into your department, and for all of it." "You came," she said. "When it mattered, you came yourself, in person, in uniform. She looked at him. That's not nothing, Orvath. He exhaled. It was a long exhale, the kind that carried weight with it. What will you do now? She'd been thinking about that since the first federal vehicle arrived, and she'd understood definitively that tonight was not going to end badly. She'd been thinking about what came after a thing like this, after you handed over the last piece of the thing you'd been carrying and stood in the cold air of an ordinary night with your real name back in your own mouth. I don't know, she said. It was honest. It was the most honest thing she'd said all night, which was saying something. The agency, he started. Not yet, she said. Maybe not at all. Maybe differently than before. She looked down at her hands, the hands that had spent 2 years taking blood pressure and holding frightened people steady and doing the quiet, unglamorous work of keeping people alive in ordinary emergencies. I was good at what I did here, she said, at the hospital, not as a cover, actually good at it. I know, he said. I read your file, the real one. He almost smiled. You have commendations. I know, she said. I earned them. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, which was something she hadn't managed with another person in 3 years, and which she found to her mild surprise she hadn't forgotten how to do. Then Sarah, she said, make sure she's taken care of. She carried that key for weeks not knowing if she was going to find the right person in time. She deserves to know it meant something. I'll see to it personally, Orvath said. She nodded. She found Sarah near the second federal vehicle, sitting on a low concrete barrier, with a cup of coffee that someone had produced from somewhere, holding it in both hands, with the focused appreciation of a person who had been running on adrenaline for hours and was only now letting herself feel the cold. Threnody sat beside her. How are you doing? Threnody said. Honestly, Sarah looked at her. I feel like I've been holding my breath for 5 weeks and I just exhaled. She looked down at the coffee. He talked about you, you know, not just the way I told you. He talked about you, specifically your name, or the name you were using. He said you had a quality he'd never been able to fully describe. She paused. He said you were the kind of person who knew in the middle of the worst moment exactly which problem to solve first. He said it was the rarest thing he'd ever seen in the field. Threnody was quiet. I think he'd be glad tonight happened this way, Sarah said. I think he'd be glad it was you. She didn't have an answer to that. She sat with it instead, the way you sat with things that were too true and too sane and too right to process quickly. She thought about Harmon's laugh and his terrible coffee and the brass key that had traveled from his hands to Sarah's to hers, and finally tonight to the people who could use what it unlocked. She thought about Ewan and Devereaux, who had deserved more time and hadn't gotten it, and whose names were now part of a record that would not be buried again. She thought about 12 steps in spot 14C and a borrowed name and 2 years of careful invisibility. And then she thought enough. Not the exhausted, defeated kind of enough. The complete kind. The kind that meant something was finished and something else was beginning, and the space between the two was for this one moment entirely hers. She left before dawn. Not running. Not hiding. She drove the gray Civic to a gas station 4 miles from the storage facility, filled the tank, and sat in the parking lot for exactly 11 minutes while she made 3 calls, one to Rhea's, one to the woman in the dark jacket whose number she now had, and one to a motel on the south side of the city where she paid for 3 nights in cash under a name that was not Threnody Caspian and was not Kestrel and was not the name she'd given by a federal officer, but was a name she'd chosen herself quietly for exactly this kind of in-between moment. She needed 3 days, maybe 4. Time to think, time to decide, time to understand what shape the next part of her life was going to take before she let anyone else have input on it. She had earned that much. The motel room was plain and clean and completely without personality, which suited her fine. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked at her phone for a long time. She had messages from Orvath, from the federal contact, one from an unknown number she suspected was Reyes. She didn't open any of them. She opened one app, the hospital's staff communication system. She sent a single message to the charge nurse on the morning shift explaining that she would be taking emergency personal leave effective immediately and that she was sorry for the short notice and that Dana should get someone to cover her Tuesday rotation because Dana would know who to ask. She put the phone down. She lay back on the bed and looked at the ceiling and let herself finally completely, without any performance of composure or any strategic calculation, feel the full weight of what the last 12 hours had been. The weight of 3 names that were gone, the weight of a brass key, the weight of her own name spoken aloud after 3 years of silence. It was heavy. She didn't try to make it lighter. On the third morning, her phone rang. Unknown number, but a format she recognized, the clean, unregistered prefixes of official intelligence communication. She looked at it for 2 full rings, then she answered, "Yes." A voice she didn't recognize. Professional, precise, the careful diction of someone speaking with deliberate clarity because what they were about to say mattered and they wanted no ambiguity. "This is a message for Kestrel," the voice said. "We know what happened in Norfolk. We know what you did. We know what it did." A pause. "There is a situation that requires the kind of person who solves the right problem first. We've been told you're that person." Another pause. "When you're ready, we would like to talk." She looked at the ceiling. She thought about 12 steps and borrowed names in a department full of people she'd kept at arm's length for 2 years while making sure they stayed alive and well and cared for because that was what she was underneath every cover and every alias and every system she'd built to stay invisible. Someone who showed up and did the work and held the line when everything else was going wrong. She thought about Harmon, who had known she'd be the last one standing. She thought he was right. "I'm ready now," she said. She swung her legs off the bed, sat up, and reached for her jacket. Kestrel was back. Not because they had called her back, not because the mission demanded it, not because there was nowhere else to go, because she had chosen it with open eyes, with full knowledge of the cost, and with the steady, unshakable certainty of a woman who had spent 3 years learning exactly who she was when no one was watching. And now the world was going to find out what that meant.